Alright, what's up, Dragon Brood? Today we're going to be talking about cards that you just may not know exist in Commander that do some things that you actually want to do. And the best part is, a lot of these are going to be pretty budget and easy to pick up. So, this should be a lot of fun. But also, don't forget that today's video is sponsored by our friends over at Tales of Adventure. That's TOAMagic.com. You can use code DRAGON, DRAGN. That'll save you 5% on all the cards we talk about today. And I'll be using their site for the prices, so you know exactly what it's going to cost over there. Well, minus that 5% after you use the code. Let's get to it. All right, so the first one's a pretty fun one, and it's Calming Verse. It's like a one-sided way to destroy all the enchantments, except for yours. And this is pretty cool because once upon a time, this card had a drawback because you might not want to take damage from your own lands because of mana burn, but since that's not a rule, which obviously is well after this card got printed, then you can go ahead and just tap all your mana just because and protect your enchantments while destroying everything else. And for a whopping 49 cents, this is an easy inclusion if you're looking for a way to get rid of enchantments and keep all of yours. This is actually a really cool card that I don't even remember actually the last time I've seen this cast, so definitely one that people have forgotten about. Oh, and while I have a second, I should mention that I did post this on Blue Sky, so you should follow me over there if you want to be included in these types of videos, because I took a lot of suggestions from the community, and this is where a lot of these come from, so just want to have that included here in all the information. Anyway, next card. Now, next up, we have Cone of Cold for a whole 4 mana. It's a sorcery as well, but this is a pretty interesting one in the sense that you have to roll a d20 to get different levels of effects from this, but at base level, you tap all creatures your opponent's controls. This means you at least get to get a clear attack through, which is always awesome, but then you could roll to possibly get extra benefit to keep them from untapping, and there's some other if you get a perfect 20. But this is actually a very underplayed card. There's a few other cards that can tap your opponent's creatures and whatnot, but this one, I also don't remember the last time I saw this cast. And again, it's like 49 cents, so easy pickup and a fun inclusion if you're looking to play something like this. Alright, Moriok Rigger is definitely one of those long forgotten cards. It's a 3 mana 2/2 human rogue, so it could fit into a couple of different theme decks possibly. But when an artifact is put into a graveyard from play, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Moriok Rigger. This is big if you have somebody that likes to play a bunch of artifacts. Maybe they're playing a bunch of treasure, I don't know, maybe food, stuff like that. If you have that in your games, this is the type of creature you're going to be looking for, because it just gets bigger with artifacts going to the graveyard. And you can also get it from putting your own in the graveyard as well. So this card could grow very quickly, very easily. And again, it's another low cost card if you want to pick this up. And again, you might just be playing a certain theme deck with humans or rogues, and this fits in there perfectly. If not, hey, it's just a solid black creature that inevitably will grow at some point during the games. But yeah, definitely a forgotten card that nobody really plays, and a bunch you probably don't know about. Right, Trepidation Blade is one I'm sure a bunch of people have forgotten about, so I'm going to go ahead and give this a read, though. It's a 3 mana equipment. When equipped creature attacks, the fitting player reveals cards from the top of their library until he or she reveals a land card. The creature gets +1/+0 to end of turn for each card revealed this way. That player puts the revealed cards into his or her graveyard, equip for 2. Now, this is a really big deal because not only does it get to pump a creature, but it can also fill your graveyard. That's the other thing. So if you have a deck that cares about the graveyard being full, or maybe you're doing a big recursion thing, or I don't know, maybe you just need to put a bunch of things in the graveyard to trigger other stuff, this is a card that could fit perfectly in there while also pumping a creature. So it does double duty while just being a pretty cheap and affordable card as well. Like, this is actually another one I'm kind of surprised we don't see a lot of. It's from Iconic Masters and from Innistrad, so it's been a couple of printings, so there's some out there, but again, a card nobody's really playing. Maybe because people forgot about it. Right, so next up we have Civi's Ruse. It's 2 colorless, white. It's an instant, and prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn to creatures you control. Now, there are a few cards that do this, but the cool part about this is that if your opponent controls a mountain and you control a plains, then you get to do this for free. And it also says an opponent control, so it doesn't even have to be the owner of the creatures you're trying to prevent their damage from or anything like that. So you can actually do some fun things here. You can use it in a diplomatic way to try to protect some things, but honestly, here's the thing. There's some cards out there that deal damage to all creatures, so it's a kind of cool, surprising way to get to protect your stuff. And also consider the fact that most of the cards that do that tend to also be red spells, means that those players are going to have some number of mountains. So why not, right? You get a free way to protect your creatures while watching everything else die. That's actually pretty dang cool. And being real, there's cards like Blasphemous Act that are everywhere these days. This is a great way to counteract that. So if you see that in your games a lot, this is a simple and perfect answer. All right, so this next one's a fun one, and I actually play with this one from time to time, but it's Gaia's Touch. It's an enchantment from the dark, so you don't see it too often, and I don't think it's had any other printings. You can get these for about $1.39 to $1.50, so nothing too expensive here. It does allow you to play an extra land every turn if that land happens to be a forest. So if you're already playing mono green or anything that plays a lot of multi-lands that count as forests, like that's totally fine. But you can also sacrifice this for 2 mana as well. So it's a really good ramp card. Can work in, again, those decks like mono green elves or something similar that you just want to ramp up really quickly. Lots of cool stuff you can do with this card, and it's very cheap to cast at just 2 green mana. And again, it's low cost considering the fact that it's only had 1 printing. So yeah, no reason not to pick this up if this is something up your alley. All right, so next up we have Withering Boon. It's a colorless and a black. It's an instant. You can pay 3 life, counter target summon spell. So this is good for a few reasons. First off, that it's an instant speed thing, which is great. You can use 3 life, and that's amazing because in Commander we have a lot of life to spend, so why not? And you don't get that many counters outside of blue without weird stipulations and stuff. So this is actually really good, and you can stop problematic commanders in a pinch if you need to, but also any type of big finishers, whether you're talking about stuff that green wants to do, right? If you want to stop like a Craterhoof Behemoth, something like that, like this card is good for a lot of things. And it's only had 1 printing from back in Mirage, but that does make it a little pricey. I think you're going to find these at around $8 or $9, but still totally affordable if you're looking for something like this to add to your deck. And this is a card that I think a bunch of people don't know exists, because again, a bunch of people started playing recently, may not have ever even seen this card cast. It's actually a really cool one and worth considering. So this next one's a little weird, but it's definitely the type of card that when we're making these sort of lists, why we enjoy doing them, right? It's Shaman's Trance. It's 2 colorless and a red. It's an instant, and until end of turn, players can't play cards from their graveyards, but you may play cards from other players' graveyards as though they were in your graveyard. So yeah, that's actually a pretty interesting card. It's a little bit different than you would expect to see. It's another cheap one that's only at around 50 cents, so, you know, easy budget card if you want to include it. But this can actually stop different types of combos, you know, where people are playing stuff out of the graveyard, but you also get the option to play those same cards from them if you want to. So this is actually a really tricky card, and one that most of the time, if you play it, nobody's going to see it coming. These are the types of sweet cards you like to find when you're like scouring through lists and just seeing what you include in your deck. And the fun part about this is it can kind of go into a bunch of different decks, right? Like this is actually a pretty fun card to have out there. Right, next up we have Seed Time. This has had a couple of printings. You can find these in the $4 to $5 range, but some of the older ones do tend to be more expensive, so be aware of that. But this is a colorless and a green instant. You can play it only during your turn. You take an extra turn after this one if an opponent played a blue spell this turn. This is actually nice if you have people in your play group that like to play counters or whatnot, or bounce your cards or whatever the case may be. Then you're like, all right, cool, well, I'm just going to take another turn. Why not? For just 2 mana. And I think that's actually pretty fair. The fact that you can't do this and, you know, on somebody else's turn or whatever, steal the turn order effectively, like, that's totally reasonable. But the card actually still has a lot of value. There, especially if you're playing some of the more powerful level stuff, there's a lot of people that are going to be playing blue with some instant speed things, and this is a good card to have to just take an extra turn and maybe surprise them and take a player out of the game. So yeah, this is a really fun one. Well, another one people probably forgot about, or really even people that know about it just hadn't considered some of the uses for it. Do you have friends in your play group that like to gain a bunch of life? And does it annoy you? Or do they gain a bunch in one turn when you think you almost have them dead? Well, let me introduce you to False Cure. This is a black instant, so 2 mana. Until end of turn, whenever a player gains life, that player loses 2 life for every 1 life he or she gained. Effectively saying that they're going to end up losing 1 instead of gaining 1, right? This card can be a surprise winner for you, especially on those turns where somebody's going to attack and they're going to gain like, I don't know, 20 or 30 life because all their stuff has lifelink until end of turn. This is the type of card you're like, oh, really? Well, how about lose 25 instead, right? Or maybe they're going to play a spell that they gain 20 life and draw so many cards. You're like, no. But how about you lose that instead, right? Like so many good things you could do with this. And there's a lot of points during the course of a commander game where people are just gaining some incidental life anyway. So even if you can knock off 4 to 6 life from an opponent, like that might be just enough to open up your window to get through for a win. So if you have those life gain decks in your pool, consider this card. It could really be worth it. Now, it's not the cheapest card on the list. It comes in at around $3-ish, I think. But yeah, really, really cool and a little bit of a surprise card that your friends may not see coming. This next one is Dispersal Shield. It's a colorless and a blue, it's an instant, and it's kind of the counter for decks that tend to play creatures or a lot of permanents. This isn't the counter for the decks that just want to sit there. So that's one of the ways that this card is actually kind of interesting. But counter target spell, if its converted mana cost is less than or equal to the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control. So often if you have a, let's say, a 5 mana creature sitting on the battlefield, well, you use this, you can counter something that costs 5 or less. So yeah, a little bit of a surprise. Could get people from just being a hard counter that isn't going to be expected. And with only 2 mana, you can play it in different multicolor decks since it's only 1 blue in the cost. So yeah, just a fun counter that if you need to add a little extra to your arsenal there, and you've been looking for another counter spell that works for your deck, maybe consider this one. It's cheap, it's affordable. Why not? Give it a go. Alright, so Vines of Vastwood is another card here that actually is a bit of a surprise that you can use offensively, defensively. Maybe you want to win a little bit of favor in some type of political game going on. This allows a lot of options. So it's 1 green, it's an instant, but it does have a kicker of 1 green as well, so possibly up to 2 mana. Target creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control this turn. If it was kicked, that creature also gets +4/+4 till end of turn. So what's fun about this is you could just protect a creature from being targeted by something your opponents are doing, whether it's yours or something else, because it doesn't have to be a creature you control. But also, you could give a creature +4/+4 in combat, whether it's yours or someone else's, and kind of swing a battle the way you want. Like, there's a lot you could do with this card, and it's very, very simple and very low cost. So this is another one that I think is fun from the surprise standpoint of being able to use both on your things and your opponent's thing. And I think it's always good to have a little bit of that flexibility in your Commander games to open up options around the board for different things you can do. The other fun part is this has had a reprint, so you can find these as low as like $1.25, $1.59, something like that. So yeah, lots of value to be had here on the cheap if you're looking for a fun, versatile spell to include in your Commander decks. Now, with all that being said, let me know what you think of these types of videos. If you like being shown all these crazy cards that nobody plays with, do you actually play with some of these cards? Or do you actually have some of your own that you would want to have included in the next video? Also, be sure to follow me on all the socials so you can be included in the conversations, or even down in the description, join my Discord so you can actually pitch in here. But that's all I have for you for now. We'll see you next time.